The Cynefin Framework is a description of the nature of different situations, and each different situation merits a different approach to leadership. The Cynefin Framework was developed by Dave Snowden. A great introduction to it is the 2007 Harvard Business Review article, A Leader's Framework for Decision Making, co-written by David J. Snowden and Mary E. Boone. I'll put a link to it in the description. The Cynefin Framework divides the situation that we encounter into 4 different domains. The first 2 are predictable and ordered domains, and the second 2 are unpredictable domains. And there is a 5th domain, which he represents in the centre, a disordered domain. The simple domain. In the simple domain, we see obvious patterns of cause and effect relationships. Events tend to be highly predictable and are based on simple interactions. As a result, problems are susceptible to fact-based, logical management. The leader's role is to sense what's going on, to categorise it, and to respond with best practice. The leader needs to use clear, direct communication and to apply effective processes to the challenge. Simple problems can easily be delegated as a whole task. The complicated domain. In the complicated domain, there are also strong cause and effect relationships at play. It's just that they can be harder to spot and to predict. The patterns can be more obscure, either because the interrelationships of different components or simply because of the scale of the system. There is rarely a single right answer to problems. Instead, there are multiple approaches that we can take, and we need to replace the idea of best practice with the idea of good practices. This is a domain that is also susceptible to analysis and to logic, but we need to bring in and listen to experts who understand the domain and can analyse it effectively. The leader's role is therefore to sense what's going on, to analyse it appropriately, and to respond with good practice. The complex domain. In the complex domain, cause and effect relationships are weak, and the result is poor levels of predictability. This means that prior knowledge and experience do not necessarily offer us clear insights into the future. Intuition can be as good an approach as analysis, and there are clearly not going to be any right answers. Instead, what we're looking for is answers that make good progress in the right direction. Usually, whatever patterns there are tend to be emergent, which means we can only ever appreciate these patterns with the benefit of hindsight. Events won't always play out in the same way, and we certainly can't separate and access the individual components of the system and make sense of the system through them. The leader's role is to probe the situation, to sense what is going on, and to respond with a situationally appropriate response. They must bring together diverse, multidisciplinary teams who can look at the problem from multiple perspectives and bring to play many different creative ideas. The leader then needs to make sure that each idea is tested and evaluated. Dissent and constructive conflict are enormously valuable in the complex domain. The chaotic domain. In the chaotic domain, patterns are either not discernible at all or are barely glimpsed. Where patterns do exist, they're likely to have some randomness or non-linear interactions embedded within them. That is to say, if we really understood all of the factors, then in principle we may be able to calculate what's going on. But just by observing what is happening, it is impossible to track back to all of the complex causal levers. The leader's priority in a chaotic environment is to stabilize that environment, to make sure that whatever problem we have doesn't get worse. They must act to re-establish control and then sense and respond. And often that response needs to be creative and inventive and craft new solutions to a problem that we probably haven't dealt with before. The disordered domain. The final domain, illustrated at the center of the diagram, is disorder. This represents where the relationships are unclear and you don't know which of the other four domains the problem really lies within. As a result, the leader needs to start with an investigation to understand which domain you're actually operating in. Team members need to gather evidence and data to assess fairly how to respond. The danger for all team members, and for the leader in particular, is our tendency to assess the domain according to our best experience. That is, we tend to see in the situation the domain with which we are most familiar or most comfortable. If our preferred style of action tends to be following a process, then we're likely to interpret what we see as evidence for the simple domain. If we're comfortable with analysis and expert judgment, then we may interpret what's going on as being a sign of the complicated domain. If we thrive with lots of team discussion and consensus building, then we may interpret the situation being evidence for the complex domain. And if we are at our most comfortable with command, control and autocracy, then we're going to want to see what's going on as being proof that we're in a chaotic domain. Effective leaders need to properly diagnose the domain we are in and then flex their response to adapt to it accordingly. Please do give this video a like if you've enjoyed it or learned from it. I'll be creating loads more great management courses videos for you, so please do subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of them. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and in the meantime, keep learning.